Feeling overwhelmed by negative news? 5 Good News Stories is your daily dose of what's going right in the world. Like the 103-year-old granny who got caught speeding in her sports car because she was living life to the fullest, or the family who found their missing cat after 3 years when it showed up at their vacation rental. Remember Flop the penguin's incredible comeback after his injury? And that guy who broke the world record for most high fives in 24 hours while raising money for charity? These are the stories that remind us the world is still full of wonder and joy. 5 Good News Stories. Pure positivity 3 times a week. 5 Good News Stories, available wherever you get your podcasts. 5 Good News Stories.
Caloroga Shark Media.
Hidely ho, Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Nate Bargatze said, when I was younger, someone said, you always reminded me of Bob Newhart. And I thought about that, and I can totally see it delivery-wise, the low-keyness of it all. Nate said, they meant not a lot of energy, not a big presence, but I was a fan of Bob Newhart. I loved his albums and sitcoms, so I like that. I was way more deadpan at the beginning, and I didn't move around a lot. I never moved. Being from the South and having this accent and talking slower, I always sounded pretty different, especially when I was in New York. So I learned how to write jokes first, and I feel like I'm getting more in my voice now. I'm still not convinced Nate is the greatest actor, but if you told me the Newhart sitcom where Bob owned the inn, if you, for some reason, remade that, and you had Nate as the straight man in that, I could totally see him crushing in that. Kelsey Cook told Fox News Digital, I think the thing that probably helped comedy explode the most was the pandemic. You know, everybody was inside on their phones, watching TV, watching their phone, and that became a time for comics to make as much content as you could because there was such a demand for it. I think you saw people finding their new favorite comics over the pandemic, and then once things opened back up and people could start touring again, people were like, great, this person's coming to my city. I've been cooped up inside for however long now. I want to go out and do stuff. And I think a lot of us saw a big touring boom, especially once people could go out and kind of resume normal life again. Yeah, there was initially, it was hard to get an arena because everybody was booking dates and everybody was out. So some big comedians had to play smaller rooms. I think now, a few years later, we're seeing it cool off a little bit. Tom Papa has talked about that on his podcast, and Jim Gaffigan didn't agree with him. We'll see. I think comedy's hot now, but maybe we're starting to step down from everybody playing huge places. Russell Peters talked to the LA Daily News about social media elevating comedians at a rapid pace. This one comes up a lot. Russell said, it's a double-edged sword. It's great for the kids that get to be seen sooner than they normally would have. The bad part is they're not really getting to put the time in, so they don't have the chops they need when it happens. There's definitely an incubation period that needs to happen. Think of comedy like a baby. Each year is a month in baby years, and at about the 9 to 10 year mark, you should be comfortable with who you are and what you're doing and have a much more stable way of navigating through this game. When these kids come in after a year or two because they've been successful because of popular clips on TikTok and Instagram, congrats, but that's not sustainable. The News said you were one of the first comedians to go viral on YouTube early in the platform's start. This must be a youngling who asked this question. I saw a lot of comedians there for the first time, including George Carlin. I know you met him and worked with him. What was that like? Russell said, he was my everything. I met him in 92, and I'd only done stand-up 3 years at this time. At the end of the meeting, I said, hey, George, maybe we'll work together. And he said, you never know, kid. It's crazy business. And there we were, working together 10 months before he passed away. It was a great way to bookend that story. He was extremely nice and so gracious with his time. He gave me some really good advice. He could have pulled rank or done anything he wanted to, but he didn't. From what I hear from everybody else who met him and knew him, he was always that guy. That's probably why he stayed in stand-up and avoided the Hollywood rat race. The people who always survive in the long run are the ones that keep it real. George was able to cut through the BS. He was always on the side of John Q. Everyman. That's something that politicians can't do because they may try to make it sound like they're there for the people, but really, they're there for themselves. George was definitely not. He was literally there for us. He was our voice. Chappelle is great at doing a similar thing, but Chappelle is also skewed. You know which side he's on. George is definitely anti-establishment. NPR talked to Ronny Chieng about death and how his feelings about death have changed over time. Ronny said, oh yeah, it's become more real. It used to be this kind of conceptual abstract, right? And then it's become very real the last couple of years. Seeing it up close, it becoming more real was kind of frightening. I was studying Buddhism recently, and there was this very interesting concept that I'm going to butcher because I'm going to give you the Cliff Notes version of it in like 5 seconds. But the idea was something like, we're a different person in every moment anyway. Our thoughts are different. Our cellular makeup is different in every second, every moment, meaning we're different people in every second of every moment anyway. So the concept of me doesn't really exist because I'm constantly changing anyway. And so when I die, it doesn't matter because I never really existed. That's kind of like the Buddhist answer, one of the Buddhist answers to that. In Sebastian Maniscalco's recent special Is It Me?, he wore a tux. The Minneapolis Star-Tribune asked Sebastian, what happened to the days when stand-up comics dressed up? Sebastian said, I grew up in the 80s looking at the showmanship of it all. Eddie Murphy with that full leather suit, or Prince. Today, the guy on stage could be a guy in the crowd. You can't distinguish the two. I try to pay homage to the Rat Pack. In the 60s, you didn't see a guy gambling in Vegas wearing flip-flops and a swimsuit. You dressed up, and I hope that comes back. Sebastian talked about the physicality of his act. I'm very conscious of the way I move and prowl across the stage. People today have no attention span, so you have to be active out there. I need room to run around. Clubs are the best place to do comedy, but when I do them, I often look at the stage and think, gee, is this all the space they're giving me? I've always expressed myself through body language. Even as a kid at the dinner table, I'd stand up to ask someone to pass me the mashed potatoes. I don't see a lot of other comedians using their body this way. Brian Regan does, but I think other comics want to look cool. Cool has to go out the window. We're not musicians. Felipe Esparza talked about life on the road and said, as a young comic, you're like a baby out in this world, you know? But it's different from being a singer, actor, or a Broadway performer. When you perform as a comedian in a small town, you're usually there for 5 days. 200 or 300 people see you every night, so you're pretty famous in that town for that week. Everything's new and exciting. I remember being on the road in El Paso, and Paul Rodriguez was headlining somewhere nearby. He was doing a corporate gig or something like that, where he was making hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we're performing at a regular club where they're paying us Chico's tacos. Paul Rodriguez kidnapped us, bro. He kidnapped us and took us to Juarez. He didn't even ask if we had passports. He grabbed one random guy and said, hey, man, you want to go to Juarez and have tacos? The guy said, are you Paul Rodriguez? Hell yeah, let's all go. So Paul Rodriguez made me and the other comedians go in a van. He had picked up 2 girls, and he took those 2 girls and us to Juarez to have tacos. When we got to the border, though, there were already too many people in the van, and nobody had luggage, and of course we're only there for about an hour and a half. The Border Patrol pulled us over, and they were searching us and stuff, and they were just busting our chops. They wanted autographs and photos, and there's a picture of us. You can look it up. It's Paul Rodriguez, Gabriel Iglesias, Armando Cosios, and me in front of the border with our hands on the hood. I remember when we made it back and he was changing his clothes, Gabe Iglesias and I were still in the room. He never told us to get out, so he finally closed the door on us. Our friend was standing outside waiting for us and said, bro, I thought you guys were going to go in the shower with him. Hey man, you ever watch sports and find yourself wishing there was a way to get into the game? Well, let's go! With Underdog, there's finally a way to make picks on sports without leaving the house. The game is in your hands. Underdog is one of the leading sports apps, and you can play now in your state. You've heard me talk about the higher or lower game. You know what I've been doing lately? So I'm a Mets fan, but a couple years ago, Francisco Lindor gave the thumbs down to the Mets fans. I will not forgive him for this. So what I like to do is I like to see what they're doing higher or lower on Francisco Lindor, and I pick the lower. Opening day, 0 for 4. Day 2, 0 for 3. Lower. Lower's the way to go. So how do you play? You choose a player who will go higher or lower on one of their stats, touchdowns, strikeouts, points scored. You can mix and match. You can create entries with baseball picks, basketball still going, soccer, whatever you want. You can play with as little as $1, and if you get everything right, you can win up to 1,000 times your money, so turn $1 into $1,000 just with your sports knowledge. Millions of fans have already won billions making picks on Underdog, and their app has over 100,000 five-star reviews and millions of players. So do what I do. Baseball, higher or lower, and root against Francisco Lindor. He shouldn't have booed the Mets fans. Root for Juan Soto. That's what you should do. So go higher on Soto, lower on Lindor. That's the way to do it. Download the Underdog app and sign up now using the promo code DCN to unlock a special offer of up to $1,000 in bonus cash when you make your first deposit. Join in on the fun when you sign up with promo code DCN. Claim your special offer today and get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly upon first deposit. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama and Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Massachusetts and Arizona, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342. In New York, call the 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Underdog, promo code DCN. Do it. Paul Reiser described his act to the OC Register and said, let's just say I'm the opposite of Cirque du Soleil. No jumping, no acrobatics, no singing or dancing, nothing out of the ordinary, just straight up comedy. I do nothing out of the ordinary. People have seen comedians before. I have a good filter system. I sort out what makes me laugh in private and what I want to share, and I've always avoided politics or social commentary. It's not the way my brain works. Some are good at poking sticks into sacred cows. It's not my personality. I'm not smart enough to make things up. I tell people what happens in my house, stuff that happens in everyone else's house. We look at people as friends. People enjoy knowing they're not alone. I talk about my life, my marriage. It's all very cathartic. I tell people about an argument with my wife. I can vent and hope the audience takes my side. How does he dress on stage? I dress on stage the way I dress in life. Jeans rolled up at the hem. He says, I like to cut out as many decisions as possible. Paul, you going to retire? Sometimes I'm tempted to stay home and take it easy, but I do stand up every other weekend, and it invigorates me. Really, I've been very lucky. It's true what they say. I work for free and only get paid for the trip to the airport. And Bob Odenkirk in Glengarry Glen Ross. Odenkirk told Playbill, "I've wanted to do this play for years. I wrote to David Mamet 20 years ago and I said, I have two requests. One, can we do an all-comedy version? Two, can we change it from land that they're selling to pots and pans? I never got a response." He's very excited. He said, "I can't effing wait," and then smiled and said, "Feel free to use the word F in Playbill. It's certainly in the effing play." Andy Haynes was down in New Orleans. He had been there before and said that time it was for Mark Norman's wedding. He rented out Tipitinas. It was all comics who were guests at the wedding, so everybody was there. Haynes also spent a year in England with a weird job. He had created an animated show, The Champions, for the sports platform Bleacher Report. The show is based on the teams and players in the European Champions League. When a bunch of crypto investors bought a British soccer club, they wanted a comedian to generate online content for it. Haynes got the gig, but he explains, "They hired me to be their in-house comedian. I made content for them, but the team was so bad and the fans hated the owners. Everything I made never got released." His Instagram bio says he's a libtard, but says that's a misunderstood joke. For the longest time, it said patriot as a joke. Then people were like, "You guy, you call yourself a patriot?" So I changed it. I'm from Seattle. The second you leave Seattle, it's the wilderness. Most of Washington is rural, conservative, gun and all that cowboy stuff. In Seattle, I had a rowdy adolescence, would go to the woods and shoot stuff. We shot up a porta potty. There was a husk of a burnt-out van that we used to go shoot. He left Seattle for L.A. and said being unemployed in L.A. is how cults start. Everyone's looking for spiritual guidance to get their next audition. I was going to hit pause on everything and go back to Seattle. I went to New York on a whim and had an amazing experience. He's got a podcast with Mike Cannon called Beautiful Boys. From ChevyHardcore.com, your home for comedy news, they talked about Kevin Hart's 1966 Chevy Chevelle and said it's no joke. Chevy Hardcore tells us whether it's his 1959 Corvette or his 1987 Buick Grand National, Kevin Hart seems to find the coolest cars and some of the finest builders to shape them to his automotive desires. Kevin's 66 Chevelle started as an original SS 396 car. Work on the car, dubbed Darkness, with two capital S's at the end, was completed by Timeless Customs. What they created was a true work of Restomod art. Built upon an Art Morrison chassis, the work involved keeping the car relatively simple, but in the best kind of way. Emblems were exchanged for Darkness in the same typeface as the original Chevelle, but the menacing side of Darkness comes under the hood. The classic 396 was replaced with an LSX 454, topped with an LS9 blower. Can you tell I have no idea what I'm talking about? That's right. With 7 pounds of boost, the car makes 620 horsepower to the wheels, but is capable of much more. However, the idea was to keep the car drivable and comfortable, makes plenty of power for cruising the boulevard or the highway. The 4L80 transmission adds to the drivability. The engine bay of the Chevelle is as clean as they come, with fabrication from Timeless that truly highlights the power plant. And that is your comedy news for today. See you tomorrow.